So welcome everybody to Creative Spirit. These are in-depth conversations with artists. They form part of a series where I'm interested in exploring artists' motivation, what compels them to make art, what's their bigger purpose and contribution to the world through their art. So it's how they move from that inner to the outer expression of the work that they do. So before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the Bibbulmun Whadjuk Noongar people on whose land we live and work and play and meet, and to acknowledge their leaders, past, present and emerging, and especially in the context of artists living in this country and the impact and influence that this country has on the work that is created. So hello, Mikaela, and lovely to have you here. So
hi, lovely to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to introduce Mikaela Castledine. She's an award-winning artist and published writer with a degree in science and an MA in writing and literature. She's been a professional artist for 30 years, working mostly in collage and sculpture, and is represented in many collections. She's won numerous awards, including Sculpture by the Sea Scholarship for Cottesloe for 2013, and the Sculpture Inside Award for Sculpture by the Sea Cottesloe 2016. In 2018, she won the prestigious Mandorla Art Prize and the People's Choice Award. So Mikaela's creative impulse is to make things out of anything that comes to hand: paper, thread, wire, wood, words, and her work encompasses interests in philosophy, animal and human behaviour, architecture, and it also nourishes a deep need for story. So Mikaela, I'm really interested in the title you chose for this conversation today, which is Artists, What Even Are They? And it sounds like it comes right from the heart, as if this is something that people have either said to you or you've wondered yourself about, you know, the work that you do. So can you tell me a bit about that, where that came from?
Yeah, it's a particularly difficult time, I think, for artists at the moment. But it's something that happens to us all the time. It's not just now, is that we have to justify the work we do. And it's really tiring. It's really quite exhausting to continually go out in the world and say, what I do is important, it's worth paying for, it's worth funding from the government point of view, it's of value to people, it's not just a private recreation. And so I get really tired of it. I get really tired of having to constantly say those same things. So I think people don't have a real understanding of what it is to be an artist, why you would be one, and of what value it is to them, not just to me. So that's why I wrote the title. I was being flippant, but yeah, there is a serious intent.
Yeah, well, it sounded like it was quite a deep sort of going on there. Yeah, great. Okay, so I mean, because that is that question there, you've got quite a broad background in science and writing and literature. So, you know, you think, well, how come you didn't go into science? What is it about art that really calls you?
Well, I think, and this will be a surprise to lots of people, I think art and science are really, really similar. People think of science being fact, and it's not. Science is not fact. Maths is fact, but science is investigation and curiosity and trying to understand the world. So a scientist will go about looking at a problem and designing an experiment to try and understand the problem, and then they'll come to a conclusion which may or may not have worked for the hypothesis that they start off with. And art's exactly the same. Art's about sort of understanding the world, and it's just done in a different way, and it's slightly more philosophical than much of the science world. But there's a lot of crossover between science and art. I started doing science at uni because my mother was an artist and my father was a craftsman, and there was a lot of artists in the family, but mum didn't want any of us to be artists. She wanted us to have proper jobs and security and safety, which comes for her from being a migrant and fleeing the war and various things. So I understood it, but so I went and did science first. I always thought that studying science was something I could easily do straight out of school. I was in that mode of studying and it was not a hard thing to do, but I thought I probably wouldn't go back to it if I didn't do it then. Whereas I always knew I would do art and I always knew I would do writing, and that eventually I would possibly go back and study them. But they were things that I just did, you know, as part of me. Whereas science was like, maybe I should have something serious that explains my level of intellect, or which is more or less what doing a science degree does. It sort of says, well, I'm working at this level, I know this much stuff. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. Because I'm just thinking, you know, your comment just now about maths, and I'm just thinking about some of the work that you do, and there must be a lot of maths in that to, you know, when you're talking about architecture as well, you know, in the introduction, where that's one of the things that inspires you. I'm really interested in what is it that you feel you bring to the world? You mentioned, you alluded to that just now, that as an artist, what is it you bring?
What I'm good at is seeing things and putting them into words or sculptures or whatever in a way that I can explain that to other people. I'm quite good at that, I've discovered, and that's one of the beauties of being in your 50s, is you do get to the point where you know the things that you were good at. So I can kind of see something and I get a little insight about, oh, okay, this could be this or that could be that, and that's interesting, and maybe if we did that this way. So those are the things that I cogitate on and I make work about, and in the hope that somebody else can gain from that insight that I've gained from looking at something really closely. Because that's the thing about art, it's not the thing. Well, a lot of people know it's not the product, it's the process. But for me, it's even more than that. It's the thinking. It's the thought that's the art bit. It's the concept that you have. The making is what you're doing to help you think. It's a process of thinking, and we're much better at thinking when we're doing other things, I find, and art is a really good one for that, particularly crochet, where it's meditative and repetitive and things like that. So it kind of disengages one level of your brain and lets the other just think about the topic that you're thinking about and make some sort of sense of it. It puts it into context. So it's, for me, it's the way I think. Making art is the way I think. So the thinking is the important bit. And what I hope is that somebody looking at it may get some of the thinking. That's my hope.
Yes. Okay. Well, would you like to take us through the photos that you've got of the work that you've done, and just explain, what's sitting deep in those pieces?
Okay, so let's do this. Hopefully it works.
Because I know you've talked before of the stories around, you know, like in the background behind you there, the sheep and the crows, and the metaphors that they are, but the stories that they also tell.
Yes, I'm very interested in those stories, the stories of family and relationships, and the way you define yourself to the world is through those sort of stories, things that you did that you're proud of, things that you're a bit sorry that you did but kind of show you in an interesting light. Those sort of stories that we tell about ourselves interest me. I'm really quite interested in family. A lot of my work goes back to family stories. This particular one that I'm showing on the screen, hopefully you can see that, goes back to my mother's story. So she was born in Burma, and they fled the Japanese invasion. She was about 8. She was living in Rangoon when the Japanese invaded, and they had to trek out of Burma in a very frightening fleeing of bombs and guns and things like that, which was obviously really pivotal to her makeup. And so in 2014, I went to Burma. Mum at that stage had Alzheimer's, so she was losing her memories, and I wanted to kind of go and retrieve some of those memories that she was no longer able to share with us. And so I really found it really fascinating country. But one of the things that I found really interesting was the Buddhist way of being in the world is to make stupas. So they try and gain merit in their sort of march to nirvana by building stupas, and stupas have to be built with the right intention. So for me, that's the same as art. Art has to be made with intention for it to be art. So it's one of those things that you can't really see, but you have to trust that that's what the artist is doing. So I tried to make a piece of art that was also stupas, so that the intention was kind of doubled, and that maybe that would gain me some merit. So that was what this piece was.
Yeah. And is there a sort of traditional structure for those stupas? They all look quite varied. Yeah.
There are. There's a lot of rules about them, but I didn't really want to be making Buddhist stupas. I wanted to make my own stupas. So I didn't want to be appropriating culture in that sense, but I have a bit of and there's another piece I'll show you, a bit of a interest in the architecture of religious buildings and the similarity that happens across cultures, across time and across the world. And it seems to me that these sort of shapes are really they're kind of really important to human beings. Like deep down we find them really satisfying, and it's not that they are pointing the way to heaven or to a God. I think it's more that they're the best thing that we can make, so that's why we gave them to God. If that makes sense. So Mum was a Catholic, a very strong Catholic, and she lived in a Buddhist country, so I found that an interesting thing to look at. I'm not religious at all, but I understand religion. I understand why people need it and what they want from it. But I like to look at it from an art point of view.
Yes, and because there's that interesting connection, the word spire, with inspire and aspire, you know, those, and breathing. Yes, it's just, it's got a lovely depth, hasn't it, that particular word.
It resonates through a lot of different areas, for sure. For sure.
Okay, beautiful. Oh, and that's all done with crochet. This is a particular type of crochet you've developed?
Yes. People send me often photos of absolutely hideous things made out of crochet. Why are you sending me this? Because there's this idea that I'm really into crochet and therefore I would crochet anything, but it's not really that. I'm not a crocheter who does art. I'm an artist, and I happen to use crochet to make my work at the moment. And it's because crochet, well, I have a mastery of it after doing it for many, many years, but it just is a way of growing a sculpture. It's organic, and it's, as I said before, repetitive and meditative. And so it's a really interesting medium to use to make work. It's also really quite difficult to make straight lines and architectural sort of shapes out of crochet. So I like that. I like doing things that are a bit difficult. I like the challenge of it. But it's also good for animal shapes and kind of much more organic shapes as well. So it's just a process that works for me at the moment. I don't know whether I'll continue to do crochet pieces. I might move on to something else, but at the moment that's what I like doing. So,
have you always done crochet? I mean, in the 30 years, or have you?
My mum was a textile artist. Oh, she was an artist of all sorts, but she started her working career, working for the Red Cross, teaching crafts to returned servicemen as part of an occupational therapy program. And so she knew every craft under the sun. So we grew up in a house that we could do any craft we wanted. It was just available to us. So we did do a lot of different craft, and I do still, but Mum couldn't teach me to crochet because I'm left-handed and she is right-handed, but my father knew how to crochet because his mother was a very good country CWA craftswoman. And so my father taught me to crochet, and that was when I was about 9. And so I've always known how to do it. I've used it for, you know, making kids' hats and various things. But I probably started making little crochet pieces after a major exhibition that I had in maybe, I think it was about 2010, and I'd spent the year making collage pieces and I needed a break from that, so I started making crochet work from there, and it just took off, and it's been really successful for me, and it would be a little foolish, I think, to do something else when it's working so well at the moment. So.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. And the work you do is astounding. It's just so just amazing. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, I've sort of done now. There we go. I haven't put these in any particular order, but so we kind of jump backwards and forwards in conversation maybe. This is a piece I did last year, and it's my probably most prominent piece because it's on the foreshore in South Perth, and it's a series of meerkats, and the point of this work was to connect the foreshore with the zoo, so that people coming across on the ferry would know that they were in the right place, particularly if they don't speak English, and they were just checking, you know, have we come to the right place? And they go, oh, there's meerkats, we must be in the right place for the zoo. So there are 5 on the foreshore, and there's another couple on a bench, and then further up Main Street is another few. So they're acting as wayfinders, which when I was talking before about people not understanding what art does, there's a whole range of things that art can do, and in this case it's just making people feel comfortable, they're in the right place, they know where they're going, and also to delight them and make them happy and make them feel welcome and all of that. So that's why I chose meerkats, because of the connection with the zoo. A lot of the other pieces in this particular area that they've revamped last year are native animals, not necessarily native of Perth, but of Australia or wider of Western Australia. And I've had a few people say to me they should be native animals, but because we have meerkats living in South Perth, they've become kind of native to that little area because they live there and belong there, and they're so endearing, and people are really enjoying them. So yeah,
they're very relatable, because that business is sort of looking out, you know, what's going on, where are we, kind of thing. That expression that they have is just
they're particularly relatable in this spot, because if you've got small children and you're near the water and you've come off the ferry and they're all running in different directions, meerkats have a really strong family structure like that, so they're looking out for danger. So you're right, it works really well in that context. So
how tall are they?
They're about 600 mil, 60 centimeters high.
Okay.
A little bigger than real size, and I needed that because they're in a big space and I wanted them to have a bit of presence. But when you actually go down to the area, you'll see there's massive 9-meter high numbat and frillneck lizard, and you think the meerkats would disappear, but they absolutely own that space. They've got such personality that they just go, no, this is ours, we've taken it over, which is great for something so small.
Yes, they're great, I love them.
They're good fun.
Yeah.
So they're made out of polypropylene, which I use a lot of. It's a plastic raffia, and they've got a marine grade stainless steel armature in them, really heavy duty, and they're coated in Pavapol, which is a fabric hardener for outdoor sculptures. So they're really strong, they're really hard, very, very durable, and tactile. So they're nice for kids to hug, and they can't damage them or damage themselves on them. So they're actually really good for public art.
Yeah. Are they fireproof? Just
No,
no.
they're plastic.
Yes.
So they're a little bit like fiberglass, really. They have that sort of feel to them. So in the way that fiberglass can be melted by somebody, I guess they could be. But their armatures are absolutely beautiful inside them, so they actually would be really nice just as stainless steel. So I might have a play with that one of these days with just having some stainless steel ones made. So
yeah, beautiful.
All right. Okay, so this is a little detail from a really much bigger piece, and this was the piece that won the Mandela Award in 2018, and it was the Mandela Award. If you're not aware of it, has a theme. It's a religious art award, and it has a theme which is a Bible piece out of the Bible, and you have to respond to that. And I've seen it often. My mum used to apply, and my uncle has been in it, and various people. So I quite often used to look at them, but it didn't always inspire something in me. But this particular one, the Bible verse really spoke to me, and it was after I had done the stupas, and so I was kind of thinking about how heaven is. We've been up to the sky. We've been up to space. We've looked around. Heaven isn't there.
Yeah.
You know, and so we kind of went, well, where is it? Where would we put heaven if it's not up there? And I was trying to think about a more domestic heaven, a heaven that you would have in your house. So I decided to make a lot of these spires, these architectural shapes, religious building architecture, using bottles and jars and various things that I would find in my house, in my pantry, that sort of thing. So it's made of 60 individual pieces, and it forms a cathedral. So some of the shapes are more Islamic, some are more Buddhist, some are more Christian, but it's a mix. They just all sit together really nicely, and they form a cathedral that's mostly see-through, which is a really nice idea for religions, that they should be really transparent, that they should be encompassing all religions, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that was a piece. I was really, really pleased with it when I was making it. It worked really well. I had a real, what's the word? You know, sometimes you're making things and it's not quite working, but this one just worked, and I just got to the end of it and went, that's it. It's it. It's worked. Yeah, it did it. So so yeah, it was really great to win that award. It's the money was really handy. As you know, artists struggle quite often with getting paid a reasonable amount for their work, but this one, was a really good one. And it's now you can see that at New Norcia in their museum up there.
Beautiful.
On display.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Okay, so this piece is one of the more recent pieces I've done. I finished this in January. It was finalist in the Collie Art Prize, so it went down there. And it came about after I had done a piece for the Rottnest Island Foundation, and those had to be on a supplied canvas of a certain size. And I thought, how am I going to do my crochet on a canvas? And I was really interested in solving that problem. And Rottnest is a really important place to me. We used to go there every year when I was basically from before I was born till I was 17. Our family holidayed there every year. And I also, when I was studying biology, went back and did some projects there, one of which involved cycling around the entire island on every single track and road and measuring the extent of the particular weed growth from the roadside, and so I kind of know the island really well. So I decided to do an aerial map of that, and then I kind of went, oh, I'm onto something here. So I made this piece. This is called Old Beverley Road, and the road that runs from left to right through the top third there is the Old Beverley Road, and it ran past the farm where I was born. And the farm where I was born is just to the left of this outcrop of granite. So the left-hand side of the picture would be the driveway. But it's land that I know really well. It's land that I walked on. It's land that I looked at every day as a child. And so taking a place that you have been in and then translating it into an aerial using crochet was a really interesting process, because there's thousands and thousands of stitches. It took me 500 hours of crocheting to make this, and it's only 50 centimeters square. So but crochet is like a mnemonic. It's an aid to memory. You're running these stitches through your fingers. You touch every little square centimetre of it. And so it seemed to me a really interesting way of trying to fix those landscapes in my mind. My mum, as I said, had Alzheimer's, and so does her brother, and several of my father's siblings have Alzheimer's. And it's one of those things that is in the back of my mind, that it's really likely that I could get this because there is a family connection. And so I'm really interested in looking at memory and how we fix memories into our minds. And the memories we had as children are really strong, and the newer memories get less so, that because maybe there's less room to fit them in your brains, I don't know. But yeah, this is a process that I'm looking at of memorizing landscapes through touch.
I just love that. I love those rocks in there. I grew up in a place that had a lot of granite rocks, and there's something when I've been to Beverly, I've probably seen those rocks, because I just, my heart goes to them. I just love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually in Shackleton. Shackleton's a little further on than Beverly, but this is the road that goes from Beverly through to another town, maybe to Tamman, I can't remember. Anyway, so to the north of, so upwards of this is the actual town of Shackleton, which was our address. So, but yes, all of that country, which is wheat country and granite outcrops and little pieces of bush, just speaks to me.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. Love that piece.
I was really happy with this piece too. I mean, obviously I'm not showing you pieces I wasn't happy with, but
no.
I'm particularly pleased with that one. This is probably a piece I'm quite most well known for up until now, is my life-size rhino. I made that for Sculpture by the Sea, and it was a bit of an exercise in seeing what I could do with this medium. So it was not so much a piece that I needed to make for a particularly personal reason, but I'm really interested. I make a lot of animals, and people say, "Oh, you're really into animals." I'm just actually not. I'm not an animal person per se. I mean, we've got a small cat, but that's the limit of our pets. And I'm more interested in people. I'm really interested in people. I'm interested in anthropology and philosophy and the way people think and the funny things that we do. So for me, animals are really important to human beings for lots of reasons, and we do kind of quite weird things with animals. We label them in certain ways. My piece that I did on feral cats was not about cats. It was about how we demonize cats for doing just what cats do.
Yeah.
So this piece came out of looking at a David Attenborough documentary on rhinos, and it had this little piece of footage of a rhino collecting some antelope horns and giving them to a female rhino as a gift. And it was a really interesting thing how we anthropomorphize those sort of things. He wanted to mate with her, obviously, and she said thanks for the gift, but no thanks. And so it didn't work. But look, it was a good try on his part. So anyway, so I decided I would like to make a rhino, and that's made out of the same stuff as the meerkats. But as you can see, scale-wise, he's a lot bigger. And it's made, all my animal pieces are made like crocheting a sock. You start at one end and you go out where it goes out and you go in where it goes in, and that's pretty much how it is. It sounds really simple. It is simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. And I do it by eye. I look at a lot of photos. If I'm struggling, like sometimes I'm struggling with my cats to get them, cats' heads are quite hard to crochet. They kept turning into bears and dogs and things like that. So sometimes when I'm having trouble, I will sketch and do a lot of drawings. But mostly I just work by eye, and I look at it and go, is that going the right direction? Is it not? Luckily, crochet is really easy to undo if it's gone in the wrong direction. And Steve always says it's the most horrifying sound he can hear from his studio. So he's got his graphic design studio downstairs and my studio's upstairs, but is the noise of me unraveling it that's put him, and he thinks, uh-oh, something's gone wrong. But it's one of those things where you think, is this going wrong? I think it's okay. I think I'll get away with it. You can never get away with it. You should always, as soon as you go, if you've got to ask yourself the question of, is it going right, then you should be undoing it then. But I never learn. I still always go, maybe it'll be all right if I just go a bit further.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's sort of, So when you do something like this, like the rhino, do you start each foot and move up and then join bits up? Yes. And you've got the stainless steel armature in it as well, have you?
This one's got aluminium in it.
Yeah.
The stainless steel I did because we were putting them near the river, which is quite estuarine at that point, so it could be a bit salty. So we needed to make sure that they were. So I decided to do stainless steel, but this one's aluminium. So
that must weigh. Yeah, and I'm just thinking how much that must weigh. It must be huge. The rhino. Hardly
anything at all.
Really?
We moved it. It was on display for Save the Rhino convention-y thing that they had in the city for a little while, and it was on the terrace, and we had to move it to my gallery, which at the time was on the terrace. So we had 4 people, and we just carried a leg each, and we walked him up St George's Terrace. Weighs less than 50 kilos, probably about 30. Yeah, weighs nothing. It's just got mesh, aluminium mesh, and aluminium going down the legs and across the back and down the front. So yeah, really light. And that's why it sold at Sculptor by the Sea in Bondi, and went to America, and the people that bought it thought it would be really heavy, and when they discovered it was really light and it had its own crate and it was easy to ship, they went, oh, okay, we'll have it. So it's gone to America. So
beautiful.
And that's one of the beauties of the medium, is that you can make stuff that's really light.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you. Yeah, now.
No worries. I just added this at the end because I've been doing my crochet work for the last probably 8 or 9 years and become more well known for that. But before that, I did mostly collage. And I think it seems to me, my husband's a really beautiful watercolor painter, so there's no way I'm going there, because you can't be competing in those sort of ways. And I just don't have the feel for paint. It doesn't do what I want it to do. I'm a maker. I'm born a maker. And so for me, collage is still I'm making the picture. So I use cut paper from magazines, mostly fashion magazines, those sort of things. And I just put it all together, work out where I'm going. If I'm happy with it, I'll glue it down with just a aquatear glue, and the glue goes over the top to sort of seal it as well, so they have sort of gloss kind of feel to them. And I really love it. I'm actually missing doing them because I haven't had a lot of time. I've been so busy making sculptures, but I really enjoy the collage. So this is a piece from my 2010 exhibition, which was based on a trip to India, and my grandmother was born in near the Taj Mahal. So we decided to do a trip to India, and took a lot of photos, and then I did a whole exhibition based on that. So that's one of those pieces.
That's beautiful. That's a whole different way of, for me anyway, of seeing collage. Yeah,
it looks more like paint. It does. People find it very hard to believe that it is collage. it's a really beautiful medium, and I haven't quite finished with it, I don't think. So I have to make myself get back into that. I've got a little break. I've finished a piece, another public art piece this week, and it's being installed on Tuesday. And then I've got a little gap where I've got irons in the fire, submissions that I've put out there, but nothing set for a little while. So I might have a bit of a moment to go back in the studio and actually just have play with some collage work for a little while.
Lovely.
So, yeah,
the public art you're talking about, is that what you put on your Facebook story yesterday, was it?
Yes. Yeah. Might just actually stop that so I can see you again. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, I think you can see a couple of the kangaroos behind me there up on the plinth.
Yeah.
So they're not really kangaroos, they're marsupials. They're sort of somewhere between a wallaby and a kangaroo. They're for a children's playground. They wanted something huggable and that children between say 2 and 6, that kind of age group, would interact with and make stories out of and play with and that sort of thing. So I decided to go for marsupials, and you can see they're up on they look like they're up on stilts, but that's where they'll be buried and concreted into the ground. So they'll be really strong and really stable and not subject to too much, somebody trying to steal them. One hopes. But I think the playground is just a really simple little playground, and it's in quite a low socioeconomic area, and it's just a really nice thought, I think, that everybody should have access to art. And it's a really good thing to do it. It's not, for me, going to be seen by many people. It's not, it's not going to be seen by important people, but it's a really nice thought that children who may otherwise never be taken to an art gallery can interact with these sculptures and get something from them. So I really like that idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important, it's a gift really, because as you say, there are kids that won't be going to art galleries in normal life. It'll have to be an excursion or something they find in the playground, or as they're walking through town or shopping centres and that sort of thing. That's an important.
And they might not know that it's art.
Yes,
and that's okay. That's okay. But part of what I started with saying about what even is an artist is that I don't mind if they don't know it's art. It's only when people cut all of the programs and try and cut all the money to artists and cut all of the public art things that you have to go, no, you don't understand how important this is to us. It's how we understand ourselves. It's how we understand the world. It's how we, it helps with our identity, it helps with anxiety, all of these things that art does for us. It's not a recreation in that sense. And yet, even if it was a recreation, sport is a recreation, but nobody has to defend the right for the AFL to start playing their games again. It's not about sport for people to play sport. It's about people watching sport on television, or even when they can go to the games. Nobody asks you to defend why that's important. No,
the social value is a given, isn't it? Almost.
It's a given. Yeah. But you're always having to defend why art's important. And as I said at the beginning, that does make me cross. People have this idea that artists are, lazy or distracted or self-absorbed, absent-minded, unprofessional, late, all of these things. And artists aren't those things.
No.
Some people are those things, and some people are artists, and most artists are people. But artists, all of the artists I know are incredibly dedicated. They're really hardworking. I work 7 days a week. I mostly work 10 hours a day. It's because I love doing it. Nobody's making me do it, but I work really, really hard. I'm really professional. I answer all my emails. I do all of the paperwork. I do all of those things. Artists are punctual. They're articulate. They're thoughtful. They're meticulous. Artists are all those things. And this idea of the flighty artist who's just wasting time or doing something not important really makes me cross.
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
just
really
such a
important.
lie. Mm.
Yeah, it is a lie.
Yeah.
It's really important, and without it, and we might find out after COVID that we can't survive without it. I've just heard from my brother that he's in theatre that it's looking like 100% of theatres in the UK will be closed. Will close down.
100%.
Due to the COVID. Yeah, because there's no funding, there's no money, and their lockdown is going on longer. I don't know.
Yes.
That was just anecdotal.
Yeah.
He said to me. And so, you know, what's going to happen at the end of that? How are we going to claw back our culture and our identity? It's going to be really hard.
Yes, and it's all the more crazy when you think, you know, you were talking earlier of the link between science and art, and I just think, you know, that symbol of the COVID virus, you know,
yes,
it's that's an artist impression. It's never as pretty and bright as that thing that you see on, you know, on the ABC Corona cast thing, and that, to me, that, you know, so there's that part of science and art meeting, and then there's the fact that all the stuff that we manufacture started off as a concept, as art in some way or other. You know, it was using talents, creativity, from the idea, from the concept, right through to the piece of machinery or whatever it is that you've got.
So there's a thing that I always talk to school kids about, and it's about why art's important in school. And it's because creativity is important. So if you are not creative, you can't be a good doctor, you can't be a good engineer, you can't be a good scientist, you can't be a good teacher. All the possible things, the professions that you can aim for, will be benefited by you being a creative person.
Yes. Yeah.
So all of our civilization exists through creativity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And art is the way we practice being creative.
Yes.
So you don't have to do art yourself. You can just participate. You can go and look at art. You can interact with it, and all of those things help you to build your creative muscles. And your creative muscles are really good for everything, not just for art. And that's why art's important. Art is the practice of creativity.
Yes.
It's the exercise. It's the doing your training to be better at the things that you do. That's what art's for, and I think that's why it's really.
And it helps with problem solving and thinking, you know, outside the square and all that sort of thing.
Sure.
But you know, because I think of creativity as being absolutely fundamental to us as human beings. We cannot not be creative. So I think
we're built that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there are, you know, people have different ways of being creative. But when I hear someone say, I haven't got a creative bone in my body, I think, no, not true. You just haven't recognised. You're probably doing it all the time and you don't know. You don't recognise that as being your creative.
No, people are creative in their gardening, in their cooking, in what they choose to wear, in the way they arrange things in their house, in the way they make their bed, in the way everything you do requires a creative decision.
Yes, yeah.
And you just don't realise you're making those choices. But they are everything you do from the moment you wake up in the morning requires you to make a choice.
Yes.
And you just make those choices and you don't realise that they are creative decisions that you're making. Yeah, it's really important. It's fundamental to who we are. I think we can't exist without it.
Yes, I agree with you. So tell me, what is it that keeps you going with it, with art?
Oh, look, it's a really interesting question. I've had a really busy few years and I'm getting recognition and I'm getting, I wanted to get to the point where I was no longer constantly looking for opportunities. I want to get to the point where opportunities were coming to me, and I'm getting to that point, and it just means that you can spend more time doing the work and less time doing the slog, which is great. But I'm a little bit bored at the moment. I sort of worked this out in about January, that everything's going really well. I'm loving the art that I'm making. I'm enjoying that. Life is fine, but I'm somebody who really likes change, and my brother's about to do a sea change and sell up in Melbourne and move down to the coast with his little family, and he's so excited about it. And I went, yeah, we did our tree change back about 15 years ago. We did our working for ourselves and working from home. So I'm kind of after something new, and I don't know what it is, but I can't not do art. But maybe I've got to a point where the work that I'm doing it's lost its challenge a little, because I've got quite good at it. I've solved the problems of it, and maybe I need a new challenge. I don't know. Something will happen. Something always does. But whether it's, when we can travel overseas again, whether we swap houses with somebody in Europe and do something mad, I don't know. But it will always involve art, but it may not be exactly what I'm doing at the moment, because, as I said, need to change. Something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, I'm just going to have a quick look at my questions and see if there's anything that sort of stands out for me. So, I guess the question is, what or who would you be without your art?
Look, it's an interesting one, and I guess if I get dementia, we'll find out, because my mother lost her ability to make art. That was one of the first things. I think she recognised she couldn't do it to the level that she wanted to be at or used to be at, and so she stopped doing it. It's hard to say, because I'm a writer as well. It kind of doesn't matter to me whether I'm making art or writing. Writing pays way less than art does. It's more of an indulgence to try to, not an indulgence, but it's a harder thing to be a full-time writer, a poet anyway, because it's very hard to make money out of it. But the thoughts in my head are the things that make me who I am, and expressing them in words or crochet or collage or whatever is just the way I think. It's the way I think. So, as I said, if my brain goes, then that's who I am without art. Just I'm not me. I won't be me anymore, I think. It's not just being brought up in an art house by an artist and just imbibing that from the very beginning, and it's 30 years of practice and honing my thoughts this way, and living with artists, and now most of my friends are artists, and going to art exhibitions and doing all of that stuff. So without art, without creativity, I wouldn't exist.
Yeah, that's a huge part, isn't it, of who we are, and obviously from what you're saying, everything.
It's everything. So, which is not to say that if I lost the use of my arms or whatever, that I couldn't do something else. I'd come up with something else.
You'd find something, But
as long as I have my thoughts, I can.
Yeah, your mind. That's the thing, isn't it? Yes.
It is. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to, how you think about your art and what goes into it. It's and what you express through it as well. It's just fabulous. Thank you very much.
Always good to talk, because you learn something about yourself while you're doing it, which is great.
Oh, good. Okay. Thanks a lot, then. All right.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.